Everyone, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. All right. So I'm trying something very different for repurposing. I am on Instagram. I am restreaming through Facebook, my business page, my personal the Space for Sistas page, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Let's see if these come through. I'm overly ambitious today, and just for the sake of my sanity, I'm even recording on Zoom and into the podcast software. I know it's overdoing it, but I really want to find one of these videos to get some good clarity out of it. So, those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Dominique Pritchett. I'm a licensed therapist, I'm a keynote speaker, and well being strategist. I am the founder of Space for Sisters as well as podcast host. Also, I'm the owner at Beloved Wellness Center. And today I am recording a live podcast episode because I was like, why go live if I'm not going to repurpose it and just get it all done at the same time? You feel me? So, if you are over on Facebook, Instagram, and all the other places I named, go ahead and drop me some love in the comment section because I'm super excited to share this message with you all. And so, I'm going to go through my normal podcast flow. And at the end of the podcast episode, I'm just going to come back, see if there are any questions, shout out some people if I see, y'all in the comment section. And so, you will hear me introduce or do the intro of my podcast. I'm still fine tuning it as well as the outro. So that's why I do record it live because, I'm working on it. So bear with me. And by the way, if you haven't downloaded, subscribed, and shared the Space for Sisters podcast, I welcome you to do that. We are on major podcast platforms. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And if you just want an easy one-stop shop, head over to spaceforsisters.com/podcast. So I'm going to be recording live, but I want to come back here and have a conversation with you all. And also, please listen to the end because I have something super cool to announce about my first challenge of the year. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Not a lot of engagement, but ride the wave with me because I know this message is going to reach someone. And I want you to let me know if you got value from it. So I'm going to drop this episode in about 3 hours. I'm going to be heading to Chicago because I'm turning up this weekend because it's my birthday party weekend. But I'm going to drop it right before I get on the highway. So welcome to the Space for Sisters podcast. We are a wellness podcast for Black women who are ready to dream, decide, and do what's necessary to live well. I'm your host, Dr. Dominique Pritchett, and it's just me, no guests today. Today, I want to focus on being a Black woman who is one of the few or only one in the room. Are Black women valued in spaces where they are those few and the only one? This room can be at school, work, in your neighborhoods, at church, or anywhere that you do not feel like you can elevate your voice, be seen, supported, and safe. This has been observed, discussed, and discussed some more, and experienced for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I know I'm not alone when I express how heavy this topic is. Some hot topics that propel a Black woman's stress level in that situation, their overwhelm. And I do get there is a shared responsibility to that overwhelm because it's often rooted in a traumatic response or a perfectionistic tendency or a desire to prove yourself to people. I'm gonna get to that because we done doing that. Some of the things that propel a Black woman's stress level in these situations are comments such as, what is professionalism? Your hair, your attire, you're seemingly angry, you're seemingly too happy. You are perceived as intimidating and not in the most positive way either. It's usually met with a negative connotation. These areas, amongst many of them, result in self-editing or code switching. Self-editing or code switching. As a protective mechanism, I've done it, I've witnessed Black women may find themselves doing those things because we like to tell ourselves it is an attempt at survival. No, it is an attempt to not be seen. Surviving means we want to get through it. To not be seen is I don't want anybody to take note that I'm here because when people take note, it's often painful. I don't fault anybody for trying to survive their situation because everybody has different cards to play and different lives to live. If we spend most of our time in life just surviving, we never get to enjoy it. So, considering that Black women's emotions are being monitored, micromanaged, too happy, too sad, too angry, not angry enough, didn't laugh enough, laughing too much, it doesn't matter. Every step becomes calculated in terms of how we respond or we don't respond. Oh, and if you're assisting a leadership role and there's a few of y'all and you're the only one, don't be surprised if you're mistaking for someone as that is not in a leadership role. And I want to be very clear, this is not throwing shade to those in supportive roles or those who have not reached a point of leadership roles. So that's not shade to anybody, but I'm talking to a specific Black woman out there in a leadership role. Don't be surprised if they assume you are a support person, hell, even a cleaning personnel. Isn't that crazy that we aren't offered the same level of grace or the same level? I have a shine on my nose and it's driving me crazy. The same level of respect when we are sitting in those rooms. Most recently, I was in a room. Well, a lot of times I'm in the room with as being the only one or one of few. It's so disheartening when someone looks like you. Y'all have had sidebar conversations. Don't advocate for you when they see your discomfort rising, and that's reciprocal. That's so disheartening. But I truly believe that person is operating from a place of fear, uncertainty, and not wanting the microscope on them. Those are the conversations I like to have is how can we best support each other when we're in that room? Way before I became a doctor of psychology, I speak with purpose. I like to add value. But until we get alphabet soup or we have so many followers, so many this, many of the places we frequent, people don't take us serious. But here's the thing that's their problem, that's not yours. Again, that ties directly back to self worth. If you believe you deserve to be there, if you believe you don't, it's time to build your own tables and stop asking to be places where you know you won't be safe. I asked many women, or I put some posts out there on social media, and I asked women to comment about that scenario. Many of them have said, I'm willing to sacrifice myself as if it'll get my people what they need. Wow. I'm willing to sit with the stress to prevent a new employee from going through it. Wow. So we sacrificing ourselves now to be seen, heard, and supported. That is quite contradictory to what we want to teach folks that are coming into the field, what we want to mentor, what we want to coach, what we want to clinically offer people when they come to our office. We're done with that. I'm declaring it for you. That's a definite declaration. So I digress. I digress. So the point of the matter is that Black women are often passed up for promotions. And here's the thing, I'm not just overly opinionated. There is current data and research that still shows this. That is why I'm having this conversation, to acknowledge we are one of few or the only one in a lot of the rooms. Pass over for promotions and not being seen as vital people, vital figures in the ecosystem at work. There is no wonder why there have been an astronomical amount of Black women who have become entrepreneurs or exploring the world of entrepreneurship over the past 5 to 10 years. We're exhausted. And as I said, we gave people a lot of power over us. We know that. And if you don't know, I'm telling you now. That exhaustion, that overwhelm, that is giving people power and permission over our lives. They don't pay me enough to have that kind of control over my life. So keep that in mind. And of course, these experiences are not the same for every Black woman. There are subcultures in the Black community and subcultures with that, different industries. So see how it resonates with you, but I just know I'm not alone. Going along with some of the challenges, we've been taught to play the game. And as I said, in order to survive, when there are only few of us, this leads to burnout. This leads to bad energy. This leads to beliefs that we don't deserve to be there. I invite you to declare and act on this declaration. If you don't feel good there, move around. If you don't feel good there, move around if absolutely possible. I'm sure you've experienced what many people call microaggressions. Microaggressions are those everyday slights, insults, put downs, dismissive attitudes, and offensive behaviors that people experience on the daily as they interact with other people who may not be of the same culture, the same hierarchy, and so many other differentials. They're often attached with isms, sexism, racism, ageism. They can be direct or indirect. They can be done as solo behaviors, here, there, and frequent, or collective with other aggressions. But also, those people can operate solo or with other aggressors. In an article called Racial Microaggressions for Everyday Life, published in the American Psychologist, a journal, they identified racial microaggressions as brief and commonplace daily behavioral, verbal, and environmental indignities. Here's my thought: whether they're intentional or unintentional, they communicate hostile, derogatory behaviors, negativity, and mostly directed towards people of color. I don't care what a person's reasons for doing it is, but it doesn't feel good. Many people say, but people don't know they're doing it. I have a hard time believing that part where they state perpetrators who do microaggressions are often unaware that they engage in that level of communication. I have a hard time believing that. Am I alone on that? Maybe this concept is just so big that people aren't aware when they are exerting their privilege and power over someone else for gain. You hear the term narcissism, borderline, and all of those terms used so loosely, but a person practices their microaggressive demeanor and demands. That's a practice because they've gotten away with it for so long, especially when we are one of few or the only one in the room. So I want you to keep in mind microaggressions can come in three forms: micro insults, micro assaults, or micro invalidations. You hear the definition embedded in the word, so I'm not going to go into that. What's most interesting is that none of these actually are micro, as they often leave a macro impact, in the sense that these interactions influences a person's entire system, their entire life, and ripples into their personal and professional lives. If you're a business person, an entrepreneur, a parent, or whoever, sit with what comes up for you after a day of being in that fishbowl or in a space where you have to tone down your shine. Ask the people around you how is that ripple is impacting them. Look at how it's impacting your bottom line. If you're working, a day-to-day job, and then you're trying to be an entrepreneur, look at how that's impacting that. But imagine to take back that power and reinvest that power back into your business. Will we be further? Would we walk with a level of confidence that is unshakable? Would we honor the days where we don't feel well? Will we honor that if we took a deeper inventory of how it's impacting our bottom line? So you got to attach stuff to a dollar sign because a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't really. Let me attach it to something that means a lot to you. I'm gonna go a little bit of history. I'm gonna share a little bit of history. A little over 100 years ago, which ain't that long, right? Ain't that long ago. The US Congress ratified the 19th Amendment. Basically, it was ruled that women could not be denied the right to vote because of their sex. The 19th Amendment, y'all, that was a deep one. That was a deep one, especially for Black women who, despite the 15th Amendment's promises of voting rights regardless of race, we ain't not gonna talk about that, still could not vote because of their gender. Think for a moment. It took not one, but two different constitutional amendments to secure a Black woman's right to vote, to have a say in the world or US democracy. This was passed a half a century apart and magnifies the reality that race and gender continue to significantly impact women of color, especially Black women, leaving them to be one or few or the only one in the room with certain jobs, responsibilities. Remember, 100 years ain't that long ago. Black women continue to face complexities and disadvantages socially, occupationally, economically, impacting their daily functioning. When we look at the data and the statistics of um, counterparts compared to Black women, unfortunately, we are leading in depression, anxiety, medical conditions. We're still leading in that. And people got the nerve to tell me that it doesn't impact their bottom line. It doesn't impact how they show up in their businesses and life. Data doesn't lie unless there's a liar who's reporting it. So, as I continue, I want you to keep those things in mind because it's not just us showing up. It is a historical, it is a generational impact. It's a ripple effect. When I worked in corporate, there were separate rules. There were separate expectations than compared to my counterparts. With this, I knew that I had to obey or I would be let go without explanation. Throughout my career, I never had a Black woman mentor in the mental health industry or in a leadership role, which I imagine was due to many reasons: underrepresentation. There are less Black women in medical, especially STEM, academia, law enforcement, whatever that reason was. Not until I started my doctorate and I had a Black advisor and dissertation chair. But when we are subjected to the isms of the world, racism, sexism, we have a double barrier to that positions us to be exposed to other aggressions such as sexual violence, harassment. Of the hundreds of women that I have spoken to over the past 16 years being in the field, in therapy sessions, speaking engagements, critical incident response calls to Fortune 500 companies or mid level companies, coaching clients, and even in my own circle, they, we share a common theme. The world does not protect Black women, and we often don't feel seen, supported, or safe, especially when it's outside of those circles. We're often held to a different set of unspoken rules. We are often voluntold to spearhead DEI efforts, manage difficult clients that look like us, or even be given all the referrals for clients that look like us. When we're asking for variability, we're asking to consider our projects or whatever, we're being voluntold what we will do. When I was at that company, I endured harassment. I endured microaggressions, which I consider macro. But when they let me go after Working there 6 years, leaving for 3 months, they cleaned house, and I went back for 1 month. They let me go because one, they said they couldn't afford me. Then they said I wasn't a team player. Then they said people didn't feel comfortable around me. Then they just said I was outright intimidating, whether I said things or whether I didn't say things. Now, I'm not a messy person, so I didn't publicly shame these people. However, when multiple Black women over the years from that company would reach out to me and ask me my experience, I was honest. So within that short duration of being let go from that that company, I settled a lawsuit for discrimination and harassment. I didn't know my rights then, but one thing I did from day one, I said, okay, taking in all my observations. One thing I did was I kept a thorough journal of every encounter, every micro, meso, and macro example of aggression, put downs, whatever. I kept a journal, who I spoke to, who I followed up an email about my feelings, the meetings they had, the write ups they did of me, and I wasn't even made aware of them. So when that time came where I was ready to amplify my voice because I had other options, that lawsuit was easy. It was emotionally painful, but I had everything I needed. So I want you to keep that in mind as you are in these spaces. Do your due diligence of taking note, going to your therapy appointments. Do what you have to do to stay emotionally intact. It is time you stop sacrificing yourself for everyone. That does not add to the greater good. Sorry, it doesn't. It's time to stop depending on others to affirm your worth. You are worthy in every room, home, community, work, where you are one of few or the only one. It's been time to secure what's necessary for you to exist in those spaces without fear. So, how do we do this? By giving ourselves grace. I recently was at a speaking engagement where the theme was grit and grace, and I delivered a message using the acronym GRACE. Give yourself permission to be so damn human. Make human mistakes. Make human chances, or take human chances, I should say. Identify realistic ways to shift unproductive thinking. Well, I should just keep my voice quiet. I should just play the game. Why should you? You were not put on this earth to dim your light. You have a birthright to abundance, but that abundance and the gifts you receive, it requires you to step out on faith, to challenge the status quo, and to protect yourself. Assess the narratives impacting the bottom line. The bottom line can be your bank account, your emotional health, your physical health. Assess those narratives. A lot of the times, the narratives aren't what we truly believe, it's what we've been told all these years. And we have not either identified or we are afraid to do it differently. The cognitions, redefine those thoughts. Going back to shift that unproductive thinking, we got to redefine the thoughts, what we're telling ourselves. And lastly, elevate your opportunities if you are in this position. I talked about some heavy stuff of how it's impacting Black women, and I want to leave you with we are in a unique position when we are one of few or the only one in a room. Identify how to maximize it. Identify how to uh, find your allies. Look at it from an eagle eyes view. They need you in that room. They do. So as you elevate your opportunities to be in this position, while in this position, plan and execute when you want to pivot, which can happen both at the same time if that's not the place for you anymore. So, as I get ready to wrap up, I want to invite you all, my sisters, to an event that Space for Sisters is hosting called Stress to Secured, a 3-day wellness challenge for Black women who are one of few or the only one in the room. It is taking place from on January 25th through the 27th at 6 p.m. each night. You can register at the link in my bio or head to spaceforsisters.com/stress to secured or check the show notes of this podcast. So, thank you for listening. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, download, and share. Got a topic you would like us to cover? Don't hesitate to send us a message. We welcome you to subscribe to our email list and connect with us across social media platforms to stay in the know about Space for Sisters. So,
Recording stopped.
that's the podcast. I'm gonna do a little bit of light editing. I don't have a lot of time today. But what are y'all thinking out there? How is this sitting with you all? Because, like I said, I know I'm not alone and it's a heavy, heavy topic. Who do I see out here? Um, Hello, Sean. Julie, hello. Alexis, so good to see you. Hey, Michelle. Oh, my favorite restaurant in Racine, Chit Chat. Hello. I think that's Angela. Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate that. So let me check over here on Facebook to see what y'all are chatting about. One thing I love about Restream is I get to see everything in one place, one setting. And so it just makes it really, really easy. Yes, Joy, get ready. Get ready. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So somebody asked me, what was my experience like after leaving corporate? Um, it took a while for me to undo the notion that I could take my power back. It took a while for me to wrap my mind around that. For so long, I had worked for other people and I did whatever they said to save my job. All the while, I felt like I was living a lie. I'm advocating for Black women. I'm doing all of this stuff to, help them discover their own sense of empowerment. But I would go home crying every night. And my partner's like, something has to change. And so being let go was probably the best thing for me because I went to work at a few private practices while I finished my doctorate. But that was the switch to I'm not going back. I'm not afraid to work. I'm not afraid to get a W-2, none of that. But that was my switch. And I call it my Shiro story because until I had someone let me go, I probably would have never broken free of working in toxic places because the money was good at that time in my career. So thank you for asking that. It took a while. I went back to therapy. I think I started medications because right before the lawsuit, they were harassing me. You need to sign an NDA. I'm not signing nothing. It took a while, but I did what I needed to do because I was, like I said, I was in my first year of my doctorate program, and that finishing that was greater than giving them any more of my energy and any more control over me. So it was a distraction, but yet it propelled me to do what I had to do. So thank you for that question. Yes. So the Stress to Secure 3-day challenge will take place January 25th through the 27th. That is next week. So please register. Yes, it is free. Please register. And I look forward to sharing and holding space with you all. The Space for Sisters group, yes, it is designed for Black women. I believe in the power of an infinity space. It's intentional and it's necessary. Joyce said, I felt the power come back earlier this week when I told one of my victim stories with me and the hero, with you as the hero and your most ideal self. Absolutely. We can only access our ideal or our best self when we tell that story. When we, like I said, when we take our voice and our power back, and I'm not, even as a therapist, I don't believe in giving my clients voices. As a coach, I don't give you a voice. You already have a voice. We have to move around the noise, quiet the noise, resolve the noise so that you can hear yourself. You can feel your own heartbeat. That allows you to access your ideal and your best self. But that requires you to get to a state where you are grounded, where you feel confident. And I say this within the same breath that that doesn't mean perfection. That doesn't mean you won't have bad days, but it does mean you are choosing to operate at a different frequency, one that brings you joy and that does not hurt. That's what the ideal self is. It is striving towards self actualization. And that is very hard to do when so many people are puppeting us around because they think we need them. And people will say, well, that sounds really arrogant. See, believe and choose to see it how you want to. Arrogance is one word for it, but being fed the hell up is another set of words. So, Joy, I'm glad you got to experience that. Thank you so much for sharing. Someone else is asking, I think it might be, I'm not sure if it's on YouTube. I can't really see where it's coming from because they haven't granted access. But someone asked, can you share what should I do if I'm being harassed? Okay. One thing I want to I did not put the disclaimer out there. This is not therapy. I'm not your therapist, and this does not constitute a therapeutic relationship, and I'm not giving you legal advice. If you are being harassed, it is important that you make the reports you need to make. In my situation, HR was a Black woman and she made my life a living hell. So I wouldn't go running towards the first Black person you see, at work, like, oh my God, this happened to me. But again, I said, identify who are your active allies and even your accomplice. Make the reports you need to make, get it documented, get copies of that documentation, ask to review your HR file quarterly or whatever. You have that right. See, when it came to my lawsuit, they scrubbed my file. But little that they know, I kept every email. And whenever I sent something, I put it in writing. I scheduled a meeting. I brought a witness. I put it in writing via email, and I would say, thank you for this time. These are the three things that I reported to you, and this is the feedback you gave me. And at that time, for me, the HR lady's like, I never said that. Why would I leave a meeting and say you said something when we literally just walked out? But it's not what she says in return. It's her letting you know this is what, or this letting them know this is what I took away from this meeting. Can you please put a copy of my HR file? Okay. Bring your witness. Document, document, document. In my world, if it's not documented, it did not happen. And also, when we think about, and one thing I definitely didn't even go into, is the trauma from these experiences. When we are experiencing traumatic events or experiences on a daily basis, our memory fails us. Our memory becomes fragments in general. And when we push memories to the back part of our brain, when we're ready to recall them, oftentimes what we recall was hijacked by the need to survive and thrive in that moment. Our ability to process information may not have been clear at that time. That's why documenting, that's why bringing a witness, that's why calling people to the table. In terms of micro or macro aggressive behaviors, point those behaviors out. There is nothing wrong with stating what you just said hurt me. It felt like you attempted to embarrass me. I don't feel good when I'm alone with you one on one. State what's happening and give it back to them. So often we're holding our stuff as well as coddling how we might offend someone. As I always say, identify and use your emotional intelligence skill set, regulating yourself, being receptive to what people will share with you. You may not always agree, and inviting them to be receptive of you. In the series of podcast episodes, there is a podcast talking about self advocacy through emotional intelligence. Take a look at that. Listen to that, I should say. So, those are some of the foundational things. And also get in therapy because you will likely act out what you're harboring if you are not finding your releases. Snatch your wellness plan so tightly, it almost feels like armor when you walk in the room. And I know I present this with a level of suspicion and paranoia, but in reality, that's the residual stuff. I invite you to equip yourself, do what you need to do so that you can walk in without fear. Many of us, it's not an option not to be the only one. So if you're going to show up in that space, teach people how you want to be treated. So for me, when I became a doctor, it was the hardest things for people in professional settings, to address me as a doctor when I notice they don't have a problem doing it with anyone else. That's intentional. And no, I'm not egotistical where I'm a doctor, address me as a doctor. But no, if I've identified myself as Dr. Dominique Pritchett in a professional setting, I'm asking you to address me as that. So I'm gonna get going because I'm trying to get to Chicago. So thank you all so much for listening. I see other comments coming in across multiple platforms. I will come back later and respond to those. So thank you all so much for listening. If you found value in this, please subscribe, download, and share the podcast. Share this live, as well as I look forward to seeing you at Stress to Secured, our 3-day wellness challenge for Black women. Thank you. Have a great day.